Alrighty. I call to order the April 28th meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Please go ahead and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Alrighty. Can we have roll call, please?
Chair Twait,
Here.
Commissioner Springer,
Here.
Commissioner Halstead is absent, Commissioner Douthat,
Here.
Vice Chair Fikes,
Here.
Commissioner Greenberg,
Here.
and Commissioner Woodard.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Alrighty, let's see. Okay, before we get to the agenda approval, I'd just like to draw your attention to the laydown we have in front of you with a requested revision in the packet. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda with the requested revisions?
I'll approve.
Second?
Yeah, second.
Thank you. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Moving on to item number 4, the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve consent.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Are there any objections? Seeing no objections, the agenda is approved. Item number D, unscheduled public comment. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak to anything not on the agenda? Alrighty then, seeing none, moving on to item E, consideration of plats. We have one, Resolution PZ 2021-06, preliminary subdivision plat of TKC subdivision submitted by Sagesser Surveys, 30485 Roslyn Street, Soldotna, on behalf of TKC LLC. Can we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Chair Fikes and fellow commissioners. My name is Ryan Foster. I'll be providing the staff presentation this evening on PZ 2021-06 preliminary plat for the TKC subdivision. Next slide, please. Sagesser Surveys has submitted a preliminary plat on behalf of the property owner, TKC LLC. This property might look familiar to the Commission. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed and passed resolution PZ 2021-01 on January 27th, allowing for additional 8 single-family dwelling units to be constructed on a 2.5-acre parcel. Subsequent to the issuance of the conditional use permit, the property owner decided to divide the 2.5-acre parcel into 3 lots. Next slide. Last meeting on April 14th, the Planning and Zoning Commission postponed the consideration of the TKC subdivision plat to await the final design of the utilities associated with the development of the 8 additional units and the subdivision into 3 lots. At this time, the Public Works Department has accepted the design for the water and sewer connections for these proposed parcels, and you can see the sketch drawing here, as well as on in the packet and on slide 12 of this presentation is an email from the Public Works Director notifying that they accepted this design. And now at this point, this design and this subdivision would meet City of Kenai code. Next slide. The plat affects the parcel described as Government Lot 107, Section 31, Township 6 North, Range 11 West, Seward Meridian. The plat will subdivide the 2.5-acre lot into 3 smaller lots, and the final bullet just gives the square footages of each of these 3 lots. Next slide. Staff analysis. Access to the proposed Lot 1A is provided via McKinley Street, which is a paved city-maintained road. Access to the proposed Lots 3 and 4 is provided via 2nd Avenue, which is a paved city-maintained road as well. There's an existing building located on proposed Lot 3, which is connected to city water and sewer services. There are water and sewer lines located in the rights of McKinley Street and 2nd Avenue, and the 8 family dwellings will connect to those services, and an installation agreement is not required. And the preliminary plat meets requirements of KMC subdivision design standards and KMC 141080 minimum improvements required under Chapter 1410 subdivision regulations. Next slide, please. Staff's recommendation. Staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat of TKC subdivision subject to the following conditions. 1, further development of the property shall conform to all federal, state, Alaska, and local regulations. The plat number reference for the Kenai Christian Church lot, which lies to the south, is labeled incorrectly. The plat number should be changed to KN 2011-52. That concludes my presentation, and happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Planner Foster. And I'd just like to note for the record, as Planner Foster brought up at the April 14th meeting, 2021, this resolution was postponed until the utility line design had been confirmed, and so there was a motion on the floor. So I'll go ahead and open it up for discussion at this time. Wishes of the commission. Questions? Comments?
I was just curious about where the right-hand side, where that road goes. Is it just there for driveways, or is it connecting to anything?
Chair Fikes, Commissioner Woodard, maybe if we could go to slide 3, perhaps. Little difficult to see here, but for those who have the packet, you can see that yes. So Lot 4, that is indeed a driveway to access those 4 units on Lot 4. Just to the 4 units. And just to clarify, it is a driveway, not a road, public right of way.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, I'll go ahead and call the vote.
All right. Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Commissioner Halstead,
Yes.
Commissioner Dothett,
Yes.
Vice Chair Fikes,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
and Chair Twait.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to E2, another plat, resolution PZ 2021-13, preliminary subdivision plat of Baleen Cove subdivision, submitted by Sagesser Surveys, 30485 Roslyn Street, Soldotna. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Chair Fikes. The staff presentation is on PZ 2021-13, preliminary plat for Baleen Cove subdivision. Next slide, please. Sagesser Surveys has submitted a preliminary plat on behalf of the property owner, Van Revocable Trust, and you can see here highlighted the parcel to be subdivided. Next slide, please. The plat affects the parcel described as, and this is a little bit of a long one, that portion of the south half of the southeast quarter of the southwest quarter, section 17, T5N, R11W, Seward Meridian, Kenai Recording District, 3rd Judicial District, lying north of the northerly right-of-way of Californsky Beach Road, excepting therefrom any portion lying within VIP Country Estates Subdivision Part 5 according to Plat 85-124. And as you can see here with the preliminary plat, this will be subdivided into 7 lots of the original 10-acre lot, and so approximately 1 to 2 acre lots for each of the 7 lots. Next slide, please. Staff's analysis. Californsky Beach Road is a paved road maintained by the Alaska DOT. Plat note number 5 denotes that No private access to state-maintained right-of-way is permitted unless approved by the State of Alaska Department of Transportation. The primary access to the proposed lots would be via Baleen Avenue, which is a gravel city-maintained road. The applicant was granted a 30-foot public access easement, which could be used for access along the southern side of the lots. But staff does not recommend this for primary access. And so this is, this is noted as a plat note on this preliminary plat upon review that this 30-foot public access easement would be on the southern portion of the subdivision, aligning with California Beach Road, and that to have a primary vehicle access coming off of California and trying to access this would probably be well, staff doesn't recommend it, and it could create a dangerous situation with vehicle traffic trying to access this 30-foot public access easement. So as I'll note later, staff, we recommended a condition to state that the primary access would be from Baleen Avenue and that would not be utilized on this 30-foot public access. A 15-foot utility easement lies along the southerly boundary of the lots and the easterly boundary of Lot 1 Baleen Cove subdivision. The city of Kenai does not have water and sewer lines in this area. Property owners would have to install water wells and septic systems. The septic systems must be installed by a DEC certified installer and meet Department of Environmental Conservation's regulatory requirements. And the preliminary plat meets requirements of KMC subdivision design standards and KMC 141080 minimum improvements required under Chapter 1410 subdivision regulations. Next slide, please. Staff's recommendation. Staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat Baleen Cove subdivision, subject to the following conditions. There are these 60 conditions. I'm not going to read every single one, but I am going to note that third condition, add to plat note number 4 that the city of Kenai does not recommend that the access easement be used as a primary access into the subdivision. That concludes my presentation, and happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Planner Foster. Can I go ahead and get a motion for PZ 2021-13?
I move to approve PZ 2021-13.
I'll second.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and bring it back to the commission. Comments, discussion, questions?
I have a question. The 30-foot easement, that is, I don't see it listed specifically, or maybe it's on the plat there. There's that 100-foot easement across the California Beach Road. Is that just written in there as an addition to that? Is there would be an easement across that area?
Chair Fikes, Commissioner Douthit. Yes, so it's hard to see on the PowerPoint here, but that's in the notes, and it's my understanding that that's sort of the borough standard for providing that type of easement is via the notes and not illustrating it on a plat. That's my understanding.
And I know one of the concerns that was brought up was the issue with accessing it off the highway possibly there. From my understanding right now, with any public highway, that if you already have access to your lot from another roadway, they're not allowing driveways to be accessed onto the roadways. They're trying to prevent that, it sounds like. So that would hopefully also prevent that from being an option even. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Douthit. Anyone else? Commissioner Greenberg?
The easement is necessary and required, or could it go away?
Chair Fikes, Commissioner Greenberg, it's a good question. What I would say is that's an already existing easement that has been granted, that is a part of the preliminary plat that we've been provided. I understand that probably doesn't entirely answer your question, but that's how we have it in front of us, and upon reviewing it, staff's recommendation on how to handle it was that we understand that based on the zoning of this parcel, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is, I believe, limited commercial. And so I believe when this was rezoned, this 10-acre parcel was rezoned for limited commercial, was the idea that there could be some type of, live-work type of residential and at-home type of business. I'm not sure if this 30-foot public access has anything to do with that. That's speculation on my part, but I would say that as staff, we didn't feel like we needed to recommend to remove it, but we wanted to recommend that it wasn't utilized as a primary vehicle access on a regular basis, just knowing that could create very likely a dangerous situation with vehicles coming off of California Beach Road.
So the intent is like a frontage road, so a person can have like a storefront or something you can see from the highway.
Commissioner Greenberg, yeah, that's. I'd say that would probably be a potentiality. I'm not as familiar enough with the rezoning to say that for sure. I would say one other component is that within the DOT right-of-way, there is a looks like a multi-use path there. So this would actually be, the DOT California Beach Road, right-of-way, then the multi-use path, then on this 10-acre property is an existing 30-foot public access easement.
Thank you. It's just going to be a big piece of property that those folks aren't going to be able to do anything permanent with. So.
Commissioner Twait, did you also have a question?
Yeah, kind of a follow-up to that, I guess. So that 30-foot is not denoted on the plat, which may or may not need to be there. I think it would be helpful to see it there. And then, so if you were going to turn off K Beach onto, I believe it's VIP Drive, and then you wanted to use or I guess use that 30-foot access, we're not recommending it, but there's nothing probably stopping that from happening? And my follow-up on that, I guess, or the secondary question is, I think that the state has some stipulation as to how far off of a road you turn before you can have a driveway in there, so you don't end up with a bottleneck, where somebody's trying to turn in and somebody's also turning off the highway. It just seems like maybe some of that's a little unclear with this plat as it is right now. And I'm more or less looking for anybody else that seems to think that might be the case.
Thank you.
On that regards, just from some personal research I've done looking into getting driveways off there, the only thing that the state seemed to have concern was with coming directly off the highway itself. Once it came to turning off of, like, it would be in this case VIP Drive onto another road, it seemed like that would be up to the city to be able to permit that, because it's a state main versus city maintained road was the only thing that they came up with when I was looking into it. They didn't mention anything about how far off it had to be, but I have the same concern as being able to, somebody in theory could own lot 3 or 4 and decide to use that public easement to put a driveway into their shop, so to speak, on that side and have their house driveway on the other side off of Baleen, and I could see that kind of being a possible issue at some point. Possibly. That's my only concern with that.
Thank you, Commissioner Delpit. All righty then. Anybody else? No further comments?
Is there any possibility that there would be a bike path through there or something that would interfere with driveways?
Chair Fikes, Commissioner Woodard. As far as this public access easement, it exists as a note, and like I said, that's to my understanding sort of the standard of how the borough does plats. I would say in other jurisdictions where I've worked with plats, as well as jurisdictions where the local jurisdiction has the authority on plats. Typically, that would have been my preference, is to actually have it drawn on the plat, not just within the notes. So I just kind of want to be clear about that. That's sort of why it's in the state it is right now. I would say, a 30-foot public access easement. I couldn't tell you what the intention actually is. I can say in past experiences, this type of setup, sometimes it's utilized for the neighborhood folks might have horses, and so they utilize that easement to ride their horses, across their shared easement, but on private property. Bike path, walking path. It could be potentially even just a trail for folks in the neighborhood to walk on. This is all this is all speculation. I really don't know what the intent of this 30-foot public access easement is, but that it's also the fact that there's no improvement now. It's just something that's on a plat. When staff, we noted it. We just kind of want to make sure that it wasn't being utilized for heavy vehicle access, because I think that would be an issue. Actually, just to add on to Commissioner Douth's point, is that for a driveway permit, that is something that would have to be applied for with Public Works, and so that would be another sort of check-in point as far as a safety issue of accessing a driveway on any of these 7 parcels.
And just a quick follow-up, there is a bike path already across that area. There's a paved bike path they already put in a few years ago on the highway right away.
I guess I just had one question. With that increased development on Baleen, and like I say, it seems like a significant amount of property that we're having to review and plat. So at what point, I guess, does the city or even the borough change it from a gravel maintained road to a paved road?
Chair Fikes, that's a good question. And I probably actually don't have the best answer to that, only that I believe this is in a portion of the city that is outside paved zone. I'm not sure what will be a trigger to reevaluate that. I'm not sure. I would say that on approval of this plat, that the intention would be that that gravel maintained road would be the primary access to these 7 lots.
Yeah, I just thought there might be some incentive if it was getting developed and paved. You might not want to use the 30-foot dirt easement. Maybe you'd go towards that, so.
Yeah.
All righty then. Anyone else? Commissioner Greenberg?
Yeah, has there been any, I wonder if there's a possibility of looking into vacating that easement? I know much of the borough, your access to the highway, I mean, you're going to have to get a state DOT permit to get your driveway. An easement like this would make it so you wouldn't. You could come into that site, you could come in off of VIP and then have that, use that access easement for the driveway, and it wouldn't require you to get a state permit to make a driveway directly off of K Beach. But all these roads have access off of Baleen. They don't need access from that point. Like, because Baleen exists, they don't really need to have that workaround to get away from a state permit. So I wonder if it's even needed and if it could be vacated in this plat. But I don't know, that would save a lot of property for people, especially if it's not, doesn't seem to really have a purpose.
We need to realize that she granted it to the public. It's something that we don't have control over.
Chair Fikes, Commissioner Greenberg, that this is, it's a public, 30-foot public access easement that has been granted, from the property owner. And so, it's something that is it's actually already occurred. I don't know if, sort of at this point and where it stands currently, necessarily what that process would be for, especially for the borough being the planning authority to essentially take, because it's already existing, as opposed to, it'd be probably a little bit different story if it was being proposed on tonight's, preliminary plat. But since that's already been executed, I'm not quite sure what that process would be to try and remove an existing easement of this sort. I think the other part of it is that we don't know quite what the driver is for this public access easement. That I agree, these are public. Or I'm sorry, these are private, properties that are being proposed on these 7 lots, and then you indeed have a public access that goes across each one of these 7 lots. So anybody who would be, looking to purchase one of these lots, would hopefully know that 30-foot easement exists across their parcel. Yeah, I think that's.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's certainly.
Chairman Twait?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, the lots are 360 feet deep, so if you effectively had 330 feet of usable space, I don't think that's a deal breaker. And I think the idea with having the limited commercial zone was to be able to have kind of a mixed between, maybe a store up front and a residence in the back. And so it kind of makes sense to have access from the front. So I don't necessarily hate that 30-foot easement, but my biggest concern, again, would be that coming off of K Beach onto VIP, you would have to take a hard right into that, depending on which way you're coming from, but you're going to turn in immediately coming off at K Beach, and I'd defer to maybe somebody that knows better than I, but that first lot is 240 feet wide. I would feel a lot better if that came down, say, 100 feet off that property line, and we did like an L-shaped 30-foot easement so you could get off of K Beach far enough to turn in and not interrupt any of the traffic off of K Beach. And maybe the borough, when they look at it, they may, have some suggestions on that, or a better idea than that even. My other question is, on the plat, it doesn't note VIP on there, and I was just thinking that would be, because I had to sit there and try to figure out exactly where that was right off the get-go, and maybe just to add that onto the plat, denote VIP drive.
I agree. Yeah. Thank you.
Vice Chair, question?
Commissioner Springer?
Yes, I was just curious about one thing, and maybe you've already said it, the staff maybe said it. It says the applicant was granted a 30-foot public easement. Who granted them the easement?
Borough, probably.
Do you have an answer for that? I was just curious.
Chair Fikes, Commissioner Springer, thank you. Actually, I have it right here in front of me. The grantor, Van Revocable Trust, whose address is P.O. Box 561, Kasilof, Alaska, for good and valuable consideration, receipt of which is hereby acknowledged, does hereby grant to the public a 30-foot wide easement for access purposes upon, over, and across the following described land owned by grantor within the Kenai Recording District, and then goes on to note the legal property. It does go on to say, grantee's right to use, the public shall have the right to use the easement for vehicular and pedestrian access across the property. Grantor's right to use the grantor and grantor's heirs, successors, and assigned shall have the right to use the easement for purposes that will not interfere with the public's full use and enjoyment of rights granted by the easement. And that's the information we have on the nature of this granted public right-of-way.
Okay, thank you.
Alrighty.
Just one last thing about the turnoff. It looks like, I would like to bring up that it is at least it is a very wide easement off the highway right there. So that helps. This setback is quite a ways off the main highway. You've got a 100-foot setback here before the lots start from the highway. So a lot of them are, I believe, are 60 or 70 feet. So this is an extra wide setback off the highway on that particular lots too, wider than normal. So that helps with that turn right off the road. You got 100 feet before it even starts. So that helps.
Anyone else? Alrighty. Call for a vote.
Commissioner Halsted,
Yes.
Commissioner Dothett,
Yes.
Chair Fikes,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
Commissioner Twait,
Yes.
and Commissioner Springer.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. That brings us to F1, public hearings. We have one, a resolution PZ 2021-12 is an application for a conditional use permit for a daycare for the property described as Lot 1, Block L, Woodland Subdivision, Part 1, located at 530 Ash Avenue, Kenai. Application was submitted by Lupine Orlub, 530 Ash Avenue. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair Fikes. Staff's presentation is for Resolution PZ 2021-12, conditional use permit for a daycare at 530 Ash Avenue. I did want to note that there was a additional letter sent from a neighbor, and that was added in the laydown. In addition, I did want to note that in the staff report, as written, said that we hadn't received any comments. So certainly with this laydown we have, and as well as actually we did after writing the staff report and publishing last Friday, within an hour or so of publishing, we actually received a letter from a neighbor as well. That one has been included in the packet already. Next slide, please. Applicant Lupine M. Orlob at 530 Ash Avenue, which is also the subject property address. The existing zoning is this is suburban residential, currently is a single-family dwelling, and the land use plan in the comprehensive plan is also suburban residential. And then here in the aerial, you can see the subject property. Next slide, please. So summary, Kenai Municipal Code 1420-230B2 provides that a daycare of no more than 8 children under the age of 12, including children related to the caregiver, is allowed with a home occupation permit. And the applicant does have a home occupant permit. That's PZ 11-03, which was passed by the Planning and Zoning Commission on January 26, 2011 for a home daycare. The applicant has operated Sproutlets Creative Learning for the past 10 years. Ms. Orlob is in compliance with this home occupation permit. Jeremiah Hamilton, City Fire Marshal, performed a fire inspection on March 26, 2021 and found the premises to be compliant. The applicant wishes to increase the number of children attending from a maximum of 8 children to a maximum of 12 children. Therefore, under Kenai City Code, requires a conditional use permit for this daycare. The applicant has indicated that she will be adding an additional staff person to care for the children pursuant to state licensing requirements. And the state license is also within the within tonight's packet. Next slide, please. A site plan identifies the layout of the interior of the daycare. We did want to include that just because it is additional information for the commission, though typically this is something that would be utilized for the licensing end of a review, as well as as for the fire marshal, maybe not quite so much for planning, but we thought that would still be good information to pass along. Next slide, please. Staff's analysis. Pursuant to KMC 142150A, the intent of a conditional use permit is to allow some uses that may be compatible with the designated principal uses in specific zoning districts, provided certain conditions are met. KMC 142150D, conditional use permits review criteria, states 6 conditions that the Planning and Zoning Commission must deem to exist when establishing findings prior to issuing a conditional use permit. Next slide, please. So these are those 6 criteria that we will review, and actually I'm just going to move to the staff report as reference for these review criteria. Criteria 1, the use is consistent with the purpose of this chapter and the purposes and intent of the zoning district. Staff's response is that the proposed daycare meets the intent of a suburban residential district to provide for medium density residential development in areas which will be provided with common utility systems. The specific intent of the zone is to separate residential structures to an extent which allow for adequate light, air, and privacy, and to prohibit uses which would violate residential character of the neighborhood, generate heavy traffic in predominantly residential areas. The land use table provides that daycares are a conditional use, therefore conditional use permit must be granted for the operation of a daycare. And again, that's for between 8 and 12, or rather, I'm sorry, more than 8. Children. The applicant has provided a site plan that provides the layout of the premises, and further, the site plan indicates that the rear yard is fenced. Criteria 2, the value of the adjoining property and neighborhood will not be significantly impaired. The parcels located to the north, south, east, and west of the daycare contain single-family dwellings. Ms. Orlob has operated this daycare for 10 years. And that the circumstances would not change other than adding 4 additional children to the daycare. The value of adjacent properties should not be significantly impacted by that change. Criteria 3, the proposed use is in harmony with the comprehensive plan. Staff's response is that the comprehensive plan has goals to support businesses and economic development and to provide a high quality of life within the city. The city has not received any complaints concerning the operation of this daycare during the 10 years it has been in operation. And given that history has determined that continued operation of the daycare would not impair the quality of life within the neighborhood. Criteria 4, public services and facilities are adequate to serve the proposed use. Staff's response is that the residence located at 530 Ash Avenue is connected to city water and sewer services and has access to natural gas, electricity, and telephone services. Ash Avenue is a paved road maintained by the city, and the operation of a daycare would not impact any of those services and would be sufficient for this use. Criteria 5, the proposed use will not be harmful to the public safety, health, or welfare. Staff's response is that Sproutlets Creative Learning has operated for 10 years without any negative effects to public safety, health, or welfare. There's no reason for staff to believe that continued operation of this daycare would be harmful to public safety, health, or welfare of the community. And then criteria 6 are specific conditions deemed necessary, and staff's response is C, conditions of approval as set forth below, in which we will discuss on the next slide. Recommendations. City staff find that the applicant meets the criteria for issuance of a conditional use permit as set forth in subsections D1 through D4 of Kenai Municipal Code 142185, and hereby recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the conditional use permit application subject to the following conditions. I will read through these, the 6 conditions, just to ensure that they're provided here on the record for this evening. 1, further development of the property shall conform to all federal, state of Alaska, and local regulations. 2, a yearly conditional use permit report must be submitted to the city of Kenai prior to the 31st day of December of each year. 3, biennial fire inspection must be completed by the fire marshal for the city of Kenai. 4, the applicant will meet with city staff for on-site inspections when requested. 5, if there is a change of use for the above described property, a new conditional use permit must be obtained pursuant to 1420-150I-5. Pursuant to KMC 1420-150I-2, this permit shall expire automatically upon termination or interruption of the use for a period of at least 1 year. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you. Alrighty. Any questions?
Just one quick one there for Lupin. How many more families are you anticipating with this 4 children? Is it going to be 1 or 2 vehicles realistically kind of thing, or?
Well, so here's the thing. In my driveway, I actually have it cleared out, and it has been for years for this. Even through the winter, it is plowed, and I can actually put 3 vehicles in my driveway at one time. This particular adding of 4 children, the actual reason why I did this is because for the last 10 years, I've only had years 2.5 to 12 old, and 2 of my families just had babies. So they had little brothers and sisters, and they were nervous about where they were going. And so I decided to redo my license so that I can accept babies. And my daughter, and I know that babies bring down a ratio of 1 to 8 children, 1 teacher. And so my daughter, who lives here, so actually nothing's changing for that. But actually I will only be getting 2 more possibly families when those babies start, because they're already going here. Their families are.
Thank you. That was what I was curious, because it mentioned more traffic, but you're looking at maybe a couple more families. Is there
I'm going to pause right there. I'm going to ask for a motion first. I apologize. If we can get a motion, and then I'll open it up for discussion.
a motion to approve?
A motion for PZ 2021-12. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and turn it back to Commissioner Dalfett.
I also got a question. Is there plans in the future? It's 1 to 8 is what you'd said, is if you had another staff member, you could?
1 to 8. When you have a child under the age of 2.5, it brings down the ratio from 1 staff member to 8 children. I am state licensed and have been since, for 10 years. And because I'm what the state calls a group home, which means I have a larger home and an area that I provide to the children. Therefore, I can be a group home and accept 12 if I have a second person working. And now that I'm going to accept babies, I will need a second person to help if I have more than 8. And that is my daughter, who already has lived with me, and she's now going to be working with me. So no extra car for her either.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any comments, questions? Commissioner Twait.
I'm just curious, since I haven't seen the recent laydown that came tonight, I was just wondering if the applicant had seen that laydown and if she needed to address anything in there. And maybe if you could you read that laydown since I don't have access to it?
Yes, good comment, Twait. I will go ahead and read what was received in our laydown today. Was from Elizabeth Allen, TWIMC. It says, I have no issue with regard to the conditional use permit for a daycare, with the exception that the landowners clean the front lawn at the end of the day, each day. And this is from 617 Fur Drive.
And I just have to say, I will throw in there, not sure if I can, but it's a big rule with me that when children leave, they clean up their stuff. It happens inside my home and it happens outside my home because it's the best way to teach your children practicing cleaning up their stuff.
Thank you. Commissioner Delpit?
Just one real quick question. It looked like between the two comments we had from some of your neighbors, they both seem to be kind of on the same path with stuff in the front yard. Has there any talk of you thought about doing a privacy fence of any kind? Just to kind of big fences make good neighbors kind of thing?
Yeah, well, and I had thought about doing a big cedar fence around my play yard. I mean, you know, $10,000 later, in the middle of COVID. It's just been a little, you know, and I mean, I don't know how to say it right without sounding, but you can't even go to 2 streets down or 2 houses down without seeing their toys in their play yard. I mean, what this lady's talking about is the swing set and the you know, tower that they build on that's plastic, or the little house that they go in and play with. I mean, are those things that I really need to cover in my side yard that literally has a tree zone, you know, all the way around it? I'm just saying, I mean, the front yard, there's nothing there. And I was like, if I'm on Zoom, I will show you if I need to. There is literally nothing in my front yard, except around holidays, I do decorate.
I just have a quick question on that. So do you have a dirt yard in the front, or would you have landscaping and grass, or?
No, mine's fully grassed. It's fully grassed all the way around, except for my driveway, my paved driveway.
And you mow on a regular basis then?
Absolutely. I have a teenage boy for that.
Good deal. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Any other questions? Anybody in the audience, online? Seeing no comments, I'll go ahead and call the vote.
Commissioner Dothit,
Yes.
Chair Fikes,
Yes.
Commissioner Greenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
Commissioner Twait,
Yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
and Commissioner Halstead.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And that takes us to F2.
Thank you.
But
Go ahead, Commissioner Twait.
yeah, just because I'm used to doing this, there is that 15-day appeal period.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You are absolutely correct. Still stay with us, though. Don't go anywhere, Jeff. F2, Resolution PZ 2021-10 is an application for a conditional use permit for a planned unit development for the property described as Tract A, Kenai Landing Cottages subdivision located at 2101 Bowpicker Lane, Kenai. The application was submitted by Kenai Landing at 2101 Bowpicker Lane. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair Fikes. Staff will present on Resolution PZ 2021-10, conditional use permit, planned unit residential development at 2101 Bowpicker Lane. Next slide, please. Applicant is Kenai Landing, Inc. This is for the legal description of Tract A, Kenai Landing Cottages subdivision. The existing zoning is heavy industrial, and then the land use plan for the comprehensive plan is also heavy industrial. And then what we have here is a phase drawing for the overall project. I did want to highlight that phase A is what is for discussion this evening. The phase A and the orange color there. Next slide, please. Proposal for a planned unit residential development for the 60 dwelling units in Phase A, and those are divided across 6 development areas with an approximately 13-acre project site, and then you can note the 6 development areas within that Phase A, and we'll talk about that a little bit more as we review the application. Next slide, please. I just want to note that on this slide is a draft of the master plan, and so we actually see a lot of the components that we're going to be talking about in this plan unit development application, and so you can see the footprints of the proposed 60 housing units, proposed roadways through this PUD. We can see the proposed promenade, the dock, the plaza, the alley, the alleyway between units, and so forth. And so I'm sure there'll actually be some times where we reference back to this overall master plan, because it just provides a lot of the components and details for this application. Next slide, please. This little bit of a breakdown. This highlights the proposed road network for the project. Next slide, please. This highlights the proposed utility plan for the project. Next slide, please. Included in, and I only included, I think, 2 slides on floor plans and elevations in the presentation, just to note that this application did have actually a number of floor plans and elevations submitted for the PUD, and we will discuss a little bit further as far as that is something that a PUD application asks for specifically. Slide, please. And here's the elevation of that floor plan. Next slide, please. So staff's analysis, pursuant to KMC 1420-150A, the intent of a conditional use permit is to allow some uses that may be compatible with the designated principal uses in specific zoning districts, provided certain conditions are met. These conditions are the review criteria for 6 conditions that the Planning and Zoning Commission must deem to exist when establishing findings prior to issuing a conditional use permit. In addition to those 6 criteria for a conditional use permit, because this is a plan unit development, there are additional conditions cited in 1420-170 plan unit residential development. And then in this application, I put this criteria to be reviewed under criteria 1, which deals with zoning. I thought that was maybe the best match to handle that review. So before we start moving forward into the conditional use permit criteria, I just wanted to note that it's the 6 criteria for a conditional use permit, and then the plan unit development conditions that are a part of conditions specifically for this type of project. And I would just note, especially for newer commissioners, plan unit development is a rare thing in the city. I'm not quite sure when the last time there was one, but I think it was over, at least over six years ago. So, and we'll go through all that criteria in the presentation this evening. Next slide, please. Okay, so conditional use criteria number 1, the use is consistent with the purpose of this chapter and the purposes and intent of the zoning district. And staff's response is that Kenai Municipal Code 142210, the land use table, provides that a planned unit residential development is a conditional use for the heavy industrial zoning district. The proposed street network is anticipated to be sufficient to accommodate the traffic generated from 60 residential units in this Phase A. In addition, a conditional use permit for a PUD must also meet conditions cited in 1420-170 planned unit residential development. And so at this time, I'll move into specifically, those standards and conditions for the PUD. So planned unit residential development shall be subject to the following standards. One, the proposed development shall meet the applicable conditions specified in KMC 142150. The planned unit residential development and associated 60 dwelling units meet the intent of KMC 142150, given compliance with the staff recommended specific conditions set below, and we'll talk about that later in the presentation. 2, a detailed development plan shall be submitted to the commission, including a site plan drawn to scale. And so that site plan would be, including things like proposed structures, designated common areas, internal, external circulation patterns, parking, and so forth. Staff's response is that a detailed development plan has been submitted by the applicant and includes exhibits for a site plan, utilities, parking, phasing, development areas, open space plans, and general floor plans. 3, the minimum parcel size allowed for a planned unit residential development shall be 2 1/2 acres, inclusive of any dedicated right-of-way or public use easement which may exist within the boundaries of this site. Staff's response is that this application meets the standard with an approximately 13-acre project site for the Phase A. 4, the maximum number of dwelling units per acre allowable within the gross area of a planned unit residential development shall be as follows. And so the table notes the dwelling units per acre. Staff's response is the heavy industrial zoning district is not specified in this standards table. Therefore, the dwelling units per acre are subject to commission determination. Staff considers this application meeting the standard with a 4.59 dwelling units per acre, less than the 6 dwelling units per acre of a low-density rural residential zoning district that generally does not have as much intensity of use as a heavy industrial district. So just to summarize that, the proposed density here is really on the lower end as far as what a PUD it would be requiring for a low-density rural residential district. 5, the allowable land use activities shall include the following: residential uses including single-family, duplex, multiplex, and townhouse dwelling units. B, any principal, secondary, or conditional uses permitted within the zoning district in which a planning unit residential development is to be established. Staff's response is this standard is met with the inclusion of single-family, duplex, multiplex, townhouse dwelling units. 6, the building coverage within the planned unit residential development shall not exceed 30% of the site area in the rural residential and suburban residential zones, or 40% of the site located in a urban residential zone. Staff's response is that Phase A lot coverage is approximately 10% of the 13-acre project site. Therefore, this standard is met as substantially lower than a 30% lot coverage. 7, the following design standards shall govern the planned unit residential development. A, the development requirements of the specific zoning district, except as otherwise allowed, shall apply to all portions of the development. Staff's response is that prior to issuance of a building permit, conditions listed under 142160 townhouses must be reviewed and approved by the planning director. Adjustments to criteria regarding lot size, or lot width, lot size, and setbacks will be considered due to the nature of the project, including the condominium approach in lieu of fee simple lots. This condition of approval is noted below, and so when we get to those conditions, we'll talk about that actually a little bit more. B, all areas not devoted to building or associated parking areas should be left in its natural state, appropriately landscaped, utilized for an active or passive recreation area, or developed for a purpose specified in a submitted site development plan. Staff's response is that exhibits have been provided demonstrating the reserved usable open space, which includes a dock, promenade, plaza, and natural spaces. A detailed landscape site plan is required as a condition of approval as noted below. A minimum of 30% of the site shall be reserved as usable open space. Any portion of this open space may be reserved in common for the benefit of the residents within the planned unit residential development. Staff's response is that approximately 34% of the project site is reserved as usable open space, therefore meeting this standard. D, residential and non-residential uses within the planned unit residential development shall be separated by a buffer strip, landscape area, fence, or other manner deemed appropriate by the commission. Staff's response is that this application does not have any residential uses associated with the Phase A. E, any use developed along the perimeter of the planned unit residential development shall be consistent with principal uses allowed in the abutting zoning districts. Staff's response is that neighboring parcels are also zoned heavy industrial, and the residential use of the PUD is considered compatible with the lodging and event uses on adjacent properties. This application does not have development planned on the northern perimeter boundary of the subject parcel. 8, the developer or subdivider of any planned unit residential development, including common open area property or amenities, shall have evidence that non-compliance with Uniform Common Interest Ownership Act, AS 34-.08, has been made prior to the sale of any townhouse dwelling units. Staff's response is that the standard has been added as a condition of approval of the conditional use permit application as set forth below. And so that takes us through the specific conditions required by the planned unit residential district. And so now moving on to criteria 2 of a conditional use permit. The value of the adjoining property and neighborhood will not be significantly impaired, and staff's response is that the surrounding neighborhood consists of city leased land, North Pacific Seafoods and open space to the north, Cannery Lodge to the south, the Kenai River to the east, and Hillcorp and residential to the west. And generally speaking, new residential construction of this nature tends to increase neighborhood property values and should not negatively impair the value of adjacent properties. Criteria 3, the proposed use is in harmony with the comprehensive plan. Staff's response is that the land use plan and the city's comprehensive plan designates this property as industrial, which may include warehousing, trucking, packaging, distribution, production, manufacturing, processing, marine-related industry, and storage, similar industrial activities. As noted in the comprehensive plan, the decline of commercial fishing industry has affected operations of some fish processing plants, which is the past use of the subject property. KMC 142210, the land use table, provides that a planned unit residential development is a conditional use for a heavy industrial zoning district, and a development option that can meet the current demands for multiple types of housing along with outdoor amenities in the city of Kenai. And then below, there's 4 bullet points directly from the comprehensive plan that staff believes supports this PUD application, and that's Q9, encourage healthy lifestyles by providing opportunities and or facilities for outdoor activities, which this application does. Land use 14, ensure a pattern of connecting streets and blocks that allows people to get around easily by foot, bicycle, or car when approving new developments, both commercial and multifamily. And again, when we go back to look at that master plan, we can see with that road network and with sidewalks and promenades and the dock and so forth that this is a pretty unique subdivision for the city to consider, and would be meeting that type of development to provide that access for walking, biking, vehicles and so forth. Land use 10, encourage creative subdivision design for residential areas. As I was noting, this is it's a pretty unique design for multiple types of dwellings for this proposal, as well as the factor of having outdoor amenities available. PR4, support projects that provide additional quality outdoor and indoor recreation. Criteria 4, public services and facilities are adequate to serve the proposed use. And staff's response is that existing public sewer and water utilities are located on Bridge Access Road and are approximately 2 miles away from the subject property, and therefore are not a viable option for this project. The PUD Phase A will have access to water, sewer, waste removal, and road maintenance provided by the commercial condominium. Natural gas service will be provided by NSTAR, and electricity by Homer Electric Association. Kenai Municipal Code 1420-250B8 requires that there are 2 parking spaces available for each unit for a total of 120 parking spaces for the proposed 60 units. The attached application meets this requirements by providing a garage and surface parking for at least 2 vehicles per dwelling unit. And there's also an additional 20 spaces dedicated to transient RV and boat launch parking. So that'd be a total of 140 spaces. While primarily provided by a private entity, staff believes the services and facilities are adequate to serve this development. Criteria 5, the proposed use will not be harmful to public safety, health, or welfare. Staff's response is that a planned unit residential development of 60 dwelling units for Phase A will not be harmful to public safety, health, and welfare. Staff believes that services are available to adequately serve this development. The applicant has provided the city with a draft site plan which indicates there will be sufficient parking available for residents and guests. The subject property is transitioning away from a traditional heavy industrial zoning use, and therefore industrial impacts on public safety, health, and welfare do not have to be considered in evaluating this project. And criteria 6, specific conditions deemed necessary, and so staff's response is key conditions of approval as set forth below. And next slide, please. So, recommendation, city staff find that the applicant meets the criteria for issuance of a conditional use permit as set forth in Kenai Municipal Code 1420-150 and Kenai Municipal Code 1420-170 Planned Unit Residential Development, and hereby recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve the conditional use permit application subject to the following conditions. And so there are 13 conditions, and I am going to go through these one by one and discuss them actually a little bit further. I'll get started going through them, and I will note the laydown that is associated with condition number 4. And so when I get to that condition, I'll note this laydown, and we can discuss that a little bit further. Condition 1, further development of the property should conform to all federal, state of Alaska, and local regulations. 2, prior to issuance of a building permit, a landscape site plan must be reviewed and approved by the planning director. That for this Phase A, 60 units, there's a likelihood that there will be that would be developed in phases, and that there will likely be multiple batches of building permits, as opposed to one building permit for all 60 units at one time. So what I did want to note about this condition is that one landscape site plan could be created for the Phase A and then compared with any future building permit submissions. And that's actually probably my preference, is that with the first building permit to get a complete Phase A landscape and site plan, and then that would set the table for any future building permit submissions, where we just go back and check that first landscape site plan, and just to make sure that each phase is meeting that requirement. 3, prior to issuance of a building permit, conditions listed under 1420-170 Plan Unit Residential Development must be reviewed and approved by the planning director. And so this is actually pretty similar to the landscape site plan. And so really the intent is to ensure that what's approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as what is required by code under 1420-170, would be reviewed for any subsequent permit submission. So really just utilizing the same way as an overall landscape site plan that's referred back to as building permits come in. 4, prior issuance of a building permit, conditions listed under 1420-160 townhouses must be reviewed and approved by the planning director. Adjustments to criteria regarding lot width, lot size, and setbacks will be considered due to the nature of the project, including the condominium approach in lieu of fee simple lots. And so, like I said, there's a laydown here from the applicant, Mr. Faulkner. And I have reviewed this, so I did receive this today, and I have reviewed it, and I don't think maybe I won't share any of my comments now, because I do want to give Mr. Faulkner the opportunity to go over what his laydown proposal is for this condition number 4. And then I think we could discuss that, probably a little bit further. And so, before I move on, the issue, noted in this condition is just that because these aren't all fee simple lots, that with lot width, lot size, and setbacks become very difficult to nail down, because this is a phase A, where there's a parcel boundary around all 60 units, as opposed to this. And that's a condominium, approach, for their project, and that's as opposed to a project where it was where it would be subdivided in each of the 60 units, or at least each building would have its own lot. So I just wanted to sort of make it clear why this is really kind of up for discussion on this condition, is that our code, the city code for setbacks, lot size, lots width, works well when it's fee simple. Not so well when you have one large boundary around phase A, 60 units. Condition 5, prior to beginning construction of the project, a building permit must be issued by the building official for the city of Kenai. 6, applicant will provide a copy of DEC compliance certification on the water and sewer system. And so there actually is certification that is for the existing water and sewer on the parcel. Staff is asking that with these 60 additional units, that the assumption is that there would be a new DEC compliance certification associated with this new development, and so we're just asking to once that's available, have that provided to staff. 7, approval and issuance of the conditional use permit for the planned unit residential development results in expiration of PZ 2020-35, granting a conditional use permit for 2 2-unit townhouses and 1 3-unit townhouse on the subject property. And so so this condition is if this was to be approved by the commission, that the recently approved last year PZ 2020-35 for those 7 total units would actually expire, and this would take place of that CUP. So that CUP is a much smaller portion of this Phase A PUD project. 8, a yearly conditional use permit report must be submitted to the City of Kenai prior to the 31st day of December of each year. 9, the applicant will meet with city staff for on-site inspections when requested. 10, if there is a change of use for the above described property, a new conditional use permit must be obtained pursuant to 1420-150 I-5. 11, pursuant to KMC 1420-150 I-2, this permit shall expire automatically upon termination or interruption of the use for a period of at least 1 year. 12, failure to provide documentation to the city for meeting these conditions shall be grounds for the suspension or revocation of the conditional use permit. And there is a process for that in KMC 1420-150G that speaks to that process, where staff would have to provide notification if that ever became a issue to suspend or revoke an approved conditional use permit. 13, the developer or subdivider of any planned unit residential development, including common open area, property, or amenities, shall have evidence that compliance with Uniform Common Interest Ownership Act AS 34.08 has been made prior to the sale of any townhouse dwelling units. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Planner Foster. I will go ahead and ask for a motion for PZ 2021-13. Excuse me, I apologize. 2021-10.
Vice Chair?
Yes.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution PZ 2021-10 with staff recommendations.
Second.
And seeing some folks in the audience, is the
may bring an additional chair up for Steve. Okay.
Yes, please come up, go ahead and state your name and address for the record.
Would you like me to stand or sit?
Whatever works for you. I think you gotta push that button right there on that black house. Should be green.
I probably should stand, otherwise I won't be able to see you gentlemen, so push this button.
Well, Ryan Foster, thank you for that beautiful summary. Chair Fikes, Commissioners, my name is John Faulkner. I'm the president of the Kenai Landing petitioner tonight. And I'm going to be running through a visual walk slideshow here in just a few minutes. Shouldn't last more than 6 minutes. Before I do that, I'd like to introduce my lifelong partner and friend, Steve Agnew, Vice President of the company. Also, development manager. Between the two of us, we have probably about 70 years of development experience in real estate in Alaska. We've done a number of projects in Seward, Birdwood, and Anchorage, as well as Kenai. I own and operate Land's End in Homer. You're probably all familiar with that, so hopefully we can make a good example here. With that, I want to thank staff. This has been a tremendously refreshing process working with staff. You guys have been great. I want to thank you publicly. So with that, the first slide. Well, let's just go back if you don't mind. The first slide is important because thematically what you're looking at there is an old barn. One of the first things we did is we pulled out of the mud. It's a net loft, and we're trying to create a vibe here, if you will, which is a fishing community. So next slide. This is an art rendering, but I think it's attractive, and it also shows a vibe, waterfront watercolor, but we're creating the heart of a small fishing town where big greens live. History looms large, and it does. And great stories abound. Next slide, please. You're all familiar with the location, but in case you're not, this slide is designed to orient you, and we're sort of the right-hand side of the brown where the arrow is. And we're positioning this as a very quiet place, secluded, surrounded by nature, which it is. You're very familiar, I think, with the natural amenities that make this a very unique estuarial environment. Sunrise over the wetlands to the east, sunsets to the west, and all very visible. So with that, next slide, please. This is in your packet, so I won't reiterate what you've already seen, but it's an extensively designed and engineered development. It's very ambitious for us, even given our experience, but we're very proud to bring what is going to be a very unique approach to waterfront development in Alaska. And you'll see that here in the next rendition. So next slide, please. We've organized, first caveat, when you look at the left-hand side of this slide, you'll see the bluffs. And I want to just say that that is not part of Phase A, so please don't be confused. And a couple of the slides are designed here to get a visual lock on where we're going. And the bluffs is part of where we're going, but it's not part of what we're looking to do tonight. All the other colors are. And we've designed this thematically for a purpose, and that is to create variety that is actually reflective of the environment that surrounds it. So interestingly, in this small area, there are some very, very distinct attributes to the land that lends themselves to what we're creating. So next slide, please. That's actually what we're building. It looks fairly large, but do recall that that is a duplex. That is an actual rendering, a visual rendering of what you have in your packet as the duplex that has been approved via CUP, and that we plan to construct starting in June. So really on the left there is a different elevation. That's not the waterfront elevation. That's the north elevation. And on the right is more of the waterfront view. And again, that is a duplex. So next slide, please. This is the Front Street Lofts, and this is where we're getting into some more creative territory. What you see there is a waterfront with
lost more to scale on the upper right, and that is what we're proposing to do. We are not taking monstrosity houses and taking up the waterfront with big millionaire homes. These are more modest, and they're designed for a different style of living. On the left, you see what we are targeting as a very much pedestrian-friendly streetscape with the potential for home occupation on the ground floor. What you don't see here are garages. You will not see any garages in this development. They're hidden, and they're designed to be hidden, so that what you see is a more, like I say, pedestrian-friendly, interactive environment. All right, next slide, please. Just up the street is what we call Highliner Row, and they're detached, and that's one of the significant reasons we're here tonight, because the prior CUP that you approved was actually gave us permission. Thank you for doing everything that we are proposing to achieve, with the exception of detached homes. That's the only real unique element to this proposal that didn't exist with the CUP. We feel that this is a significant enough element to the project that we decided to take the PUD route. Next slide, please. The plaza, a very different look, but you see in your packet a very distinct plaza. It's currently in an area that is being deconstructed. It's a former warehouse, but concrete already exists, so the pad already exists, so it's very much a campus kind of opportunity for housing. Next slide, please. Now we're getting into an area that is outside of the immediate PUD that you're looking at tonight. So there's only 2 remaining slides. But I'm sharing this to give you a sense of where we're going. And we have lands that are outside of your immediate view tonight in a place we call Meadows. And it's beautiful, beautiful wetland areas. We're not building in a wetland. I don't want that to get out. But we will be taking advantage of the viewscapes that exist around the perimeter. And this is a representation of what we hope to come back and prove someday with you if the project's successful. Next slide, please. Up the bluff from that, again, outside of your immediate purview tonight, is a 1-story low-profile rendition of what we hope to do to capture the views out west. That whole bluff area has an unobstructed view out west, and you capture those sunsets in the summer, and yet you have the wetlands. Next slide, please. I think that concludes. So this is the last area, and this is within the outline that you're looking at in the packets. So that's a good representation of the duplex style. The roof lines might be a little bit broader than they need to be, but with that, I'm going to maybe stand for questions, but I'd like to conclude the visual block. This is what we're doing. These representations are not here to mislead you. They're here to commit us to what we're doing, so you have a real good understanding of where we're going with this. I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Agnew to discuss some of the more meat. Thank you.
Chair Fikes, members of the commission, I'm Steve Agnew. I'm a shareholder in Kenai Landing in the Homeport project. I'm committed to the Kenai Peninsula. I've lived off and on down here, worked off and on down here, and the owner with my wife of the Subway stores on the Kenai. I love the Kenai. I partnered with Mr. Faulkner in the development of the Lands and Lodges, those beautiful condos you have seen on the end of the Homer Spit, and we're committed to do a project of that quality here in Kenai. Since 2003, our company has sought to productively employ the fish processing plant and the other industrial facilities on this property. But despite enormous investment by our company and several other companies, we've all witnessed the decline in the commercial fishing processing in the Cook Inlet Basin. So now we are confronted with redeveloping and tonight that will reestablish the economic use of that property and build the assessed valuation of that property. As Mr. Faulkner's presentation demonstrated, our intent is to emulate a port or seacoast community. In those types of environments, of course, homes and businesses were clustered to be close to the water, as ours is. This implies some vertical scale and density, but with proper planning, we've been able to retain the views, create a pedestrian orientation, provide access for emergency vehicles, and relegate the passenger vehicles and the garages to a subordinate position. You'll be able to drive to Homeport, but you're going to be able to walk in Homeport. Tonight, of course, we're looking at Area A, Phase 1 of this residential planned unit development, which is authorized under KMC 142170. This application, of course, has a lot of talented individuals. The firm from Kenai Nelson Engineering, the architectural firm from Anchorage Envision Architecture, and the contribution of your staff. Mr. Foster and Ms. Anderson all worked and did a lot of heavy lifting with us. Staff packet before you, of course, has a very extensive review of the project, and we concluded that staff has gone over it very well, very accurately. The only area that we would like to discuss with you are certain conditions that Mr. Foster did discuss with you. There are, if you're not there, on page 102 of your packet, they represent conditions. Actually, the only two that we really have to talk about are conditions 2 and 4. In condition 2, he was referring to the landscape plan, and we would just like for the record to state that as we build out our landscape plan, each individual area as it is submitted for a building permit would of course have the landscape installed and planted as part of that permit. You know, we're not going to put landscaping all over area A if it's obviously being built in phases. The second issue pertains to the conditions of condition number 4, or the terms of condition number 4, that reference the standards applied to townhomes. Mr. Faulkner, working with our architectural staff, wanted to come up with some standards that we could rely on as minimum standards, because of course we have many masters to serve. We have our customers who want to know what they're getting, and then of course what their neighbor is going to get next to them. Our builders who want to know what it is they can in fact build, and our lenders who of course are going to want to know what we're promising. So Mr. Faulkner has developed a grid with our architectural staff of various dimensions for the different areas, and we would like to put that as just an attachment to the language in this lay down in front of you, this proposal in front of you. It's an ambitious project, but it was an ambitious project when we started the Lands End in 89. It was 20 units, and they were very small, and today it's about $25 million of assessed valuation. We're hopeful that after phase 1, we could see another $30 million of assessed valuation at the Homeport project. If you have any questions, that's why we're here tonight, to answer your questions.
Thank you. I will go ahead and open it up for the commission. Anybody wishes of the commission? Commissioner Twait, are you just in your seat there? All good?
I guess I just have a couple questions with the phase 1 and the dock and the assumption. Have you guys have you got any approval for doing all the work on the waterway as far as docks and anything within the Army Corps of Engineers realm of things as far as, I don't see that in phase one, but I see that it's on the map about a dock structure and all that kind of walkways and boardwalks within the river area. Has that been addressed yet for permitting of that as far as a future project already been taken care of, or how is that coming along?
Well, the promenade exists, it physically exists. It's the previous industrial forklift path
Okay.
for the fish plant, as is the dock. The dock that exists there now is pretty robust. It'll need some maintenance, and we'll do some repairs to it, but it's an existing conforming structure.
Okay. So just,
That exists.
it's the existing structure, not adding an additional dock right now. You're just, you already have that existing structure, you just would be repairing or maintaining it, so essentially. Okay. I was curious.
Yes, sir.
How much industrial activity is left there in this area?
Well, for us, none. The last people we had were processing fish, and they got caught up in that fire that, interrupted the traffic. And John, I think they closed up shop in Alaska, that company.
Prior to that, it was Great Pacific Seafoods who filed bankruptcy, and so North Pacific Seafoods was the subsequent. But to answer your question, there's no industrial activity on Tract A. There's no industrial activity on the adjacent Cannery Lodge property. The only industrial property that directly abuts us would be the city lease property to the north. That I believe is inland fishery.
They still offload fish and stuff like that.
Yeah. They're across the wetlands, so they're sort of abutting our property line. Yeah. But there's a significant buffer there.
Do you think there would be an advantage if this was in a different zone for developing this project?
I don't believe so, because what drives this development are the unique physical attributes. And we're fortunate that your zoning regime allows us to go with the PUD, but in terms of changing the zoning, I don't think that would do us any good.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any additional questions for the applicant?
You said you're not disturbing the wetlands at all, but I know around in there are some ponds that birds are drawn to, the little shorebirds. Are you filling in anything around there that would disturb the birds?
We're not touching the wetlands.
Okay, these are in and around that, the dock area.
Oh, you're talking on the tidelands.
Maybe.
The tidelands below the promenade, we do own those, but no, we are not touching those.
Oh, good. I like those birds.
Commissioner Halsted?
In some of the plans, it almost looked like there was potential for commercial. Were you anticipating any kind of commercial activity in that area or allowing for it?
John, you want to speak to that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner Halsted. The answer is what we call Cannery Road North is to be determined, and we wanted to be honest about that. We are trying to identify potentially light commercial for that to help support the residential development, because part of what we're trying to do here is create a somewhat self-sustaining community that doesn't have to leave the site for everything. But of course, we need some density before we can get to that point. So it is to be determined. Having said that, there's no specific commercial uses that we've identified at this time, other than home occupation. And those would be allowed by code. In other words, there's nothing unique that wouldn't be otherwise allowed by code.
Thank you.
Commissioner Twait?
And this is not a direct question to the applicants, but it is nearly impossible to hear anything that they're saying. So I don't know if there's a battery not working or something, but just maybe more for it. I don't want to make them start from the beginning again, but just anything else. It's real hard to understand anything that they're saying.
Thank you for the update. Commissioner?
I was just gonna apologize for.
Well, we apologize for that glitch.
We have the button green now.
Oh, wonderful. Well, now I do want you to start from the beginning then.
Alrighty now, room service. All right.
I guess I just had one more question, and I'm sure you've done it or at least looked into it. The economic viability of this in this area for the cost of the housing units, do you guys have a rough idea what those units are going to be valued at? Are we looking at $1 million units, or are we looking at more reasonable price type units in the beginning? I just don't know by the size of these look like they could be fairly high-end units, and I didn't know about if you looked into viability, so hopefully filling them sooner than later kind of thing?
I guess I was reluctant to share that one slide for that very reason, that it might give you an inflated sense of actually what we're trying to accomplish, because it's not millionaire homes. So no, they are not going to be expensive in that sense. These are designed to be affordable, and we are targeting that by confined footprints, by keeping the amenities fairly modest, and the overall square footage modest, and the densities are going to allow us to achieve low per unit land costs. We own the property free and clear, so we don't have high interest and high risk. So we think, given the market studies that we've done and the pre-sales that we've already achieved, that we will deliver a product that is in demand, that is competitive as any on the Kenai Peninsula, and we believe we have to do that in order to succeed with this project. So I think that bodes well for the community. We have been under the illusion, I think it's an illusion, that the economy is collapsed because of COVID. But what we've learned since we initiated this project with city staff in October is just the opposite. Our research is yielding confirmation that this location in the Kenai Peninsula is a desirable destination for people to live and work. We're crossing our fingers and hope that proves to be true. But we have the luxury of time, and we have patience, and this, we're convinced, is the project that is best suited for this location. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah.
Have you got a rough timeline on when you think you might have the first units completed?
Oh, we want to get underway with Sticks in the Air by June, and we've had a really hard time getting all the subs and all those supplies. You know, you've probably read there's interruptions in the market, but our goal is to get the first Sticks in the Air by June.
I had a question for you on slide, page 113 of the packet. So if I'm looking at this right, each one of these units, unit 4, 3, then it jumps to unit 28, and then unit 1C. Is that what you're proposing in the conditional use permit today?
I think she's looking at campus, so.
Or is that something for a
Here, if I
different?
just give me a second here.
Okay.
On page
113?
We have a page
Yeah.
112.
We have
Is that an
page
as-built?
112, and then it
Oh,
goes-
so this isn't how it's really gonna be? Oh, gotcha. That answered my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question for you. Roughly how many units do you intend to start with initially?
In 2021, 4.
Okay.
The two duplexes.
So the as-built, this is just a sample? I'm still confused, I guess. Because I'm seeing different numbers and,
Ma'am, the two duplexes are intended for the, and I'm gonna call that color kind of a teal green, what we're calling Cannery Row South, that is looking at the river to the right of the page, or to, that would be to the east. Does that help you?
Cannery Row South. Which one, which page are you guys on?
Now, this,
114.
it looks
114,
like it's
okay.
page 114. Unfortunately, ours is not page marked, but I'm looking at this master plan.
This is, this right here is. It's got the number.
Okay.
Yes.
I guess my only concern was it's just the hodgepodge of the numbers. So as a driving person, I just wanted to know if I'm going to drive down the road, am I going to see 12, 13, and 14? Because it seems like 13 is in between 15 and 16. That was what I was concerned with. Because you had also mentioned that it was going to be walker-friendly with driveways or garages in the back of the units. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, so for example, on what is called Cannery South, that is to the south or more to the bottom of the page of Cannery Street, there is an alleyway that allows vehicles to enter the rear of the units that are labeled 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Do you see that, ma'am?
No, help me out, Bob. Where's that out?
Try 117.
117.
I just let her.
Okay, there we go. That helps, thank you. I was just, yeah, continuity of travel of pathway, that's why it was, the other one was kind of hard to follow, thank you. That was my only concern with access to getting in there.
Is this question time for public or only?
I was gonna have the applicant, and then if there was no more, questions for the commission, I was gonna go ahead and, ask if there was anybody else in the public that would wanna testify. Commissioner Twait, you're good? Okay, thank you, gentlemen. I will go ahead and open it back up to the public then for anyone else that would like to speak. To PZ 2021-10. It's a lengthy and long process, sorry.
No, thank you. And is there, do I need to speak into this? So yeah, it's on. Okay. Okay. My name is Dawn Bragg, and I give my address to you.
Name and address, please, yes.
36256 Cotton Tree Lane in Sterling, Alaska.
Thank you.
Yeah. I appreciate this whole process and hearing from everybody, so thank you. And I'm glad I have the opportunity to speak because I've been coming to that area on Cannery Road for quite a while because it's in a magnificent birding area and has magnificent views of all the volcanoes as well as the Kenai Mountains. And of course, you know, it's the Kenai River is our place where amazing salmon come up that we all love, and belugas, and it's just, for me, it is such an amazing and special place that as I listen to this process, it doesn't seem to maybe have a planning for a place of this magnitude. For me, this is like world-class magnitude of property. And with that, I guess what I've had this kind of a vision of like an interpretive center for salmon that's kind of honoring the process of all, like this is a place where natives have fished and lived for generations. Like I think the cannery buildings go back, maybe John, you can correct me, maybe to the 1800s or so. You know, I mean, like this is like, these are National Register of Historic Places and like some of the most marvelous scenery anywhere. And so with that, I guess I was hoping for more of like a public interpretive area where anyone can go. Kind of like, John, I loved all your signs before that showed all the history of the fishing and the cannery there. And so I know, and no disrespect, but I know, like, if any of you have driven to the end of Homer Spit, and like you're getting to this place where you think you're gonna like have this magnificent view over the ocean, and you don't. So it's a little bit, I guess I would just love to have that view open and for all the public to enjoy, you know, so that like that instead of just having people living there and, you know, having that view and all these like thousands, I mean, I was just there and there were hundreds and hundreds of birds in those wetlands just in front of the that area. So it's a flyway for them, and I think like, well, you know, I'm not like anti-development. I think we could develop the area in a way that's like an interpretive area where we can, you know, you have people saying like, you know, people from China are going to be coming over in big numbers for tourism, and, you know, have it as this amazing tourist area that, you know, I mean, if you can imagine the population of China giving you money to come and see a tourist site, I mean, the possibilities for, you know, economic development is just huge, I think. And so, and I think it would be really cool to have an area that honors that history of the fishing and the salmon, like, because, you know, we have people coming here who are fishing, and then you have people who want to go see something. And this vision that I've had of this center is this, like, and I'm talking like an interactive theme park. So my profession by trade is a natural history interpreter, and so I could see this vision of that you have this little native boy going to his fish camp, and he's asking his grandmother like questions about the salmon. And she says, go and ask the salmon. And the little boy's like, go and ask the salmon. And he sits down in the grass, like, you know, pouting. What is, you know, why won't grandmother tell me this story? And then he falls asleep and has these visions of the salmon going down the river and, you know, and telling the story of these amazing salmon that we have on the Kenai River as such a magnificent resource. So I guess that's about all I'd like to say.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Does
you.
anybody have any questions? Anybody else in the audience wanting to speak to PZ 2021? Anybody in phones? No one? Okay, I will go ahead and bring it back to our commission for discussion. Comments, questions? It's a lot of information.
I guess I had, with the roadway, where it comes in off the roadway, where would the city maintenance end on this? I'm looking at the bow picker lane right away, and where it comes in off the end of the road. Where does the city maintenance end, and where would private maintenance take over? Or is this gonna be up to city standards for taking over the road, maybe? I wasn't sure on that.
I'll defer to the chair and to staff, and I'll just be here as they call upon me to answer questions. Is that okay?
Thank you. I will go ahead and defer to the applicant to answer that. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry, the question.
I was just curious on the initial plot here I was looking at. I was just curious where I see Homeport Way. I'm assuming, is that all going to be private maintenance, or is that going to be an extension of a city maintenance
Privately
road?
maintained.
Privately maintained?
Yes.
Okay.
Cannery Row Road is a state maintained road.
Okay.
So it would end there.
Okay, and that's kind of where that cul-de-sac turnaround is, and then you
Yes.
guys would take over, okay. All right, yeah, I just was curious if it was gonna be in another city street to be maintained by the city or not, so I was curious. That's it.
Commissioner Greenberg?
Yeah, on what was mentioned over there, some of the historic things, there's like an old cemetery there, things like that. Do you guys have some accommodations for how you would to preserve those or deal with those things?
There's two graveyards, Madam Chair, Commissioner. There's two graveyards. I wouldn't necessarily call it a cemetery, but there are two grave sites, and they're well marked, and they're well preserved, and they're well identified. We have no intention of moving those, building on top of them, so they will be preserved in history. In fact, I'm proud to say that I wrote a book about it. It's called The Ghost of Fukuda Jiro. So the cover is a picture of the graves. There you go. But we're not going to disturb those.
Yeah, that's neat. Would you, well, I guess you could put interpretive stuff there. That one's pretty interesting with all the is that Japanese on that? Is that?
Yes, those are Japanese grave sites. So we absolutely have what we regard as a natural paradise there. And with respect to Dawn, we agree with you, and we are going to be good custodians of that. We're Alaskans at heart, and I spent an hour just watching the geese feed the other day because I just love that, and that's why we love Kenai Landing. We'll preserve and protect those elements of the experience, and the experience is vast. So you're bringing up several, and trails are in our plan. They're not in per se phase one, other than the promenade, and that is a significant development. The dock itself is a significant development that we are adding to and committing to this PUD. So those are right on the water, and they are public. I want to state that for the record. They're public. Privately owned, but open to the public.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, discussion? Chairman Twait?
Yeah, I just wanted to go on the record and say that, I think at some point in time, that piece of property was going to be developed into something as the industrial and commercial aspects of it faded. And I think these guys have a proven track record of being able to do it right. And developing 2 lots at a time and building a house or 2 at a time, I know how difficult that is for me. There's a lot of moving parts, and these guys have a track record of showing that they can do it. And I would couldn't be more comfortable than letting these guys make that happen. So I will be in support of this.
Thank you, Commissioner Twait. I agree as well.
Chair Fikes, may I just interject? What I'd like to do is actually I'd like to come back to the laydown and specifically on condition 4. And so I would just like to share, like I said, I did receive this today. I did review it, and I did take the master plan along with the associated table with these setbacks. And it looks to me that it's a good fit based on the type of project that's being proposed. And again, that's sort of that, compact, walkable type of neighborhood, which the, heavy industrial district, is the development standards associated with heavy industrial is probably not the best fit to try and create, a compact, walkable type of neighborhood. And so just to go back just a step further, and so as a plan unit development, like I said, they're fairly unique and also fairly specific, as in the idea is to give a certain amount of like flexibility for a development that's pretty dynamic. You have a lot of different housing types here, as well as you have all those, you know, the outdoor amenities and so forth. And so they all kind of come together to create this neighborhood that has that sort of, you know, compact neighborhood feel. Now, having said that, when you look at the plan unit development section of code, and that is 1421-77A, it's stating the following design standards shall govern the plan unit residential development. The development requirements of the specific zoning district, again, heavy industrial, except as otherwise allowed, shall apply to all portions of the development, which I believe is also that there are townhomes with this project, and so the townhome section of code would also be a part of review. Now, having said that, the except as otherwise allowed is that sort of opening that a PUD allows to have a discussion about something like setbacks, which are actually, you know, pretty important for the design of this type of neighborhood. And so I believe there's a provision in the code that allows this proposed, you know, condition to be considered by the commission. I'd say from staff, you know, I would be open to recommending the proposed replacement of condition 4. A couple things I did want to just note is because it starts becoming specific about these setbacks in this table, where you have the 6 development areas, you know, front street lofts, range, and so forth, as well as it's specifying, again, going to setbacks, lot width, lot size specifically because of the type of condominium project that we have. I would just say it's my opinion that if this was to be included as a condition of approval, that if this did change after the fact, right now my recommendation would be that we'd likely have to come back to P&Z. I don't think the code really gives myself as planning director and staff the authority to negotiate these if it's been approved by the Planning and Zoning, you know, Commission as a condition. So I just want to make that clear. But I do feel like these, you know, these setbacks and standards are all reasonable for this project. I did have two quick questions. I know that you had noted on Cannery North, there's a bit of a TBD on the non-residential side, and there is a TBD here on the side setbacks. Is that something you're comfortable with being approved, knowing that maybe at a later date you'd need to come back and fill in that TBD? So that was just kind of one question. And then on Cannery South and the Plaza for side setbacks, it says 0 lot line, but then it says 10 feet. Can you elaborate what that's driving at on?
Let me take the latter point first, if I may.
Sure, please, yeah.
0 lot line means that there are units that are joined and sharing a common wall, so there's no side setback in that instance. However, there's an end unit at some point. So that 10 feet is designed to be
the end unit,
separated from another structure or another unit boundary.
Gotcha. I think that helps to clarify that on those two, the Cannery South and the Plaza side setbacks. And then, and then the first one is just, you know, if this was to be considered the TBD, is you know.
I'm perfectly happy with you inserting a number there that you think is reasonable. The idea is not to evade or elude the commission's judgment. The idea there is to be honest and say, hey, we really don't know exactly what's going in here. That's the simple of it.
Sure. I don't have anything particular that I'd be driving at. My concern was just to, if that is set now, it just means moving forward it's just a little bit easier, but.
I have no problem if you want to put a number to that. I would recommend 10 feet because I think that's the current side yard setback.
Okay. And I would just end on that I would recommend, based on the proposed language in the laydown, that staff would be amenable to replacing the existing condition with this. So I did want to just offer that to the commission.
Thank you.
And for staff, do I need to amend the original motion? Would the maker of the motion like to address that?
So we need an amendment?
Just amend the original motion to include the laydown as suggested by Planner Foster. Would
Okay,
that
I'd
work?
like to make an amendment to the original motion to change condition number 4 of staff recommendations to read as it is in the laydown that was provided this evening.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, and we need to vote on that? Call. Anybody discussion, objections?
This is just for the clarification of the TBA to be 10 feet now? Is that what we're getting at? Okay. I'll go for a vote for that.
Yes.
So this is just for the amendment to be added to the original motion clarifying the substitution, correct?
That's right, yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner Greenberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
Commissioner Twait,
Yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Commissioner Halsted,
Yes.
Commissioner Dothett,
Yes.
and Chair Fikes.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, so then that brings us back to the main motion.
I had one clarification. So this does include that 10-foot that you just penned in your, what we just approved was, okay, so we're not doing a second one for that part. All right, I'm good.
Is the floor still open for public questions or no?
I kind of closed the floor, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any more discussion, or do you want to vote on the main motion, or?
I'm good. Are you guys good? We'll go ahead and call the vote.
Commissioner Woodard,
Yes.
Commissioner Twait,
Yes.
Commissioner Springer,
Yes.
Commissioner Halsted,
Yes?
Commissioner Dothett,
Yes.
Chair Fikes,
Yes.
and Commissioner Greenberg.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. And as with any conditional use permit, you have a 15-day appeal period. Alrighty then. Thank you very
Madam
much,
Chair.
gentlemen.
Thank
I
you,
appreciate the lengthy presentation, and I wish you good luck.
Look forward to seeing the development happen.
There is the additional public comment on the report, second letter.
I'll get, one, I just want to make one quick point. We are going to have an additional public comment at the end of our agendas. So if there's another item that anybody in the audience wants to speak to, if there's anybody else out there online, if you have some additional comments, there'll be another opportunity.
Okay. So how long, just 3 minutes or so?
Probably about another 10 minutes maybe. Yeah.
Thanks.
Alrighty then, let's get us rolling through to J. Reports. City Council Member Glenn Denning. What do you have for us tonight?
Well, I have a few items. The city council met on the 21st of April, and we had scheduled public comments from Dr. Keith Hamilton on the Alaska Christian College program's goals and future hopes. And very quietly, they have developed quite a presence there. And it's, of course, a positive presence in our community. And they offer a good foundational education beyond high school for primarily Native children, young people from Alaska. And he just updated what their plans are for the future. And I encourage anybody that has any questions to maybe just wander by the campus and just see the wonderful project that they do have going there. And I'm sure if you have any specific questions, they'll be able to answer them. We had a public hearing amending the Kenai Municipal Code to adopt the most current edition of Robert's Rules of Order. We enacted an ordinance accepting and appropriating a volunteer fire assistance grant from the United States Department of Agriculture Forest, passed through the Alaska Division of Forestry for the purchase of forestry fighting equipment. Our municipal fire department, of course, we live right on the edge of the boreal forest, and at times we have been called upon, and in the future will be called upon to fight forest fires, brush fires, etc. We accepted a grant from the Division of Public Health for community funding to support efforts to increase testing and vaccinations and decrease health inequalities for all Alaskans. What this is, it's a collaboration with the state Department of Health. If you recall, behind the IGA, there's a public health building. People in there, along with our fire department, we're going to be using what we call our standby ambulance, and it's going to be refigured to take vaccines, injections to individuals or to groups. They have to be at least two, so if there's someone that can't come to a facility, they will go there and administer the injections if so a person so desires. But most importantly, be available for fishery workers when they show up. And this plan is, of course, in collaboration with Borough and Soldotna Public Safety. We authorized the city manager to enter into an airline operating agreement with Hageland Aviation, so we'll have a third airline at our airport here this summer. So that's a positive, a very, very positive thing for our new airport. We have a place for them, and they will have a adequate new area to operate out of. We awarded a contract for audit services to BDO USA. What they do is they go through our budget, our finances, and give us a report, an audit report, right the end of summer at the close of the fiscal year. And we've always gotten high grades, but we've also been held to very strict standards. And they give a very thorough report, and there's really no real warts. Just all questions that they have are laid out and are answered by our staff and by our financial director. And so it was a competitive bid, and we picked BDO once again. We adopted a resolution allocating previously adopted funds for the Wildwood Drive rehabilitation project. We're still, there's funds available. We're not sure if it'll cover everything, but we're still negotiating with the state. They're the primary beneficiaries of that road because they have a facility at the end of that. And then also the Native Association, which owns the underlying right-of-way. And so we're hoping for some cooperation with that. But movement is progressing, and that road definitely has to be upgraded. It was put in under military standards, 60s maybe, and not much attention has been given to it since, just mainly because of ownership issues. But we're going to bite the bullet, take the leadership, and we'll have a good road. We approved by the consent agenda non-objection to the renewal of liquor license for Don Jose's. We approved by the consent agenda a special use permit for the State of Alaska Department of Natural Resources, Division of Forestry for aircraft loading and parking. Should there be a need for forest fires, they will have a dedicated area on our forest fighters, rather, on our airport, as we have provided in the past. We also approved by the consent agenda a special use permit for Pacific Star Seafoods for aircraft loading and offloading. At times, I know in the past, we've had fish come in from Bristol Bay, and I'm not sure what their business plan is, but it will involve aircraft and fish and cash flow for our community. We also approved a special use permit for Everett's Fuel for aircraft parking. These are the tankers that take locally refined products and then fly to the what I call the outback of our state. We approved a special use permit for UPS for aircraft loading and unloading. That's in the area that they now occupy, and it just affirms their previous commitment to our community. Empire Airlines also has a permit for aircraft parking, and we at the airport we approved the First Amendment to janitorial agreement to Reabor, and again janitorial for their services at the airport. And then we approved a purchase order over $15,000, and this is a power gurney for the MTs, emergency EMTs rather, and what it is, instead of just picking up a stretcher or having something on wheels to push around, this actually has the wheels actually have power, and then a mechanical assist to raise and manipulate the bed as it gets into an ambulance. And our next meeting will be, what is it, 2 weeks, where were we at here, 28th, be on the 5th of May. And that ends my report. Is there any questions?
Thank you very much, Councilman. Any questions?
And then I just, other than this, I just have one more comment. I know we've been promised training and whatnot, but you can see our planning department has been busy with an exquisite project. But in addition to what Mr. Foster may offer, I suggest that maybe get up with Diane and just maybe get a little introduction to the borough planning meetings that they have, and just see how they go through and see how they look at a plat that we've prepared. And actually, it's a prelude to a preliminary plat, our considerations, and just see what their discussion is and how they handle their business. And maybe you could, if anyone does come there, you could introduce them to some of the, especially the platting director and some of the people there. The room is open now for folks, right? Wonderful. Okay, it's I think if you have time, warm summer afternoon, evening, or something, go and see. It's an interesting experience, and then you see how the borough approaches their responsibilities. And in our deliberations, they're actually the keeper of record, which makes them the 51%er in our relationship for most things, other than gravel pits and certain other things. Okay. Anything else?
Sounds good. Any questions? Seeing no questions, that brings us to J2, Borough Planning. That would be myself. speaking of the borough, we are back open for business in a brand-new room with brand-new equipment. It's quite nice. It is some pretty intuitive equipment and front and center. So even if you didn't want to come, yours truly, representing Kenai, is right in front, 2 feet from the camera. Got to check your teeth. Make sure nothing's in between your teeth. And we are spaced 6 feet apart. I believe there was about 10 of us out of 13, so we had a very nice showing of folks for the first night that we were there, and we had a little dry run on how some of the equipment is going to work, as well as it's kind of a hybrid type style, so those that are able to and willing to can come and participate at the diocese in the fashion that they have them separated 6 feet apart. And those that still wish to Zoom can go ahead and Zoom. And we met this Monday and April 26th, and we reviewed see, where are we at? What do we have on our docket? Oh, we did a right-of-way vacation in the Homer area that got approved. We vacated a portion of Hugh Road, 60-foot right-of-way, including the adjoining utility easement, and that went ahead and was passed. And then we had a conditional use permit for an anadromous water protection district for an erosion protection project on the north bank of the Kenai River down by milepost 57. This was where they are going to be doing this summer the new construction in the Sterling area. So they're relocating the highway and pushing it up towards Juneau Creek. And so they're going to have some materials and stuff that they're going to need to be storing. And so this was right away for permission to store some of that wrap material, I believe rip-wrap material. And so we went ahead and approved that. And then he had another one that was a little further down on mile 58 for, again, storage of some of the materials as they're going through that area and doing the construction. And then we moved on to an ordinance amending the floodplain management mitigation plan, I believe. And let's see, that was in the Seward area. And so that got approved and helped update and bring some of their areas up to the insurance standards for that area. So that was a good thing to see, having them go through that and update some of their current codes and whatnot so that some of the folks in the area can have that upfront and current information for their insurances. So we went on and had a resolution to adopt the City of Soldotna's hazard mitigation plan. We went through quite a bit of discussion on that one, and that also got approved. And then that brought us down to a resolution, and this one was the rest of the night of discussion. And this was establishing a procedure for appealing a planning director's decision on reconsideration to uphold a prior approving a non-conforming use application. And so what ended up happening is we had an application come before us that subsequently got appealed through the hearing board, and the planning director made a final decision on it, and Borough Code actually allows an applicant to go ahead and appeal this. But in having that code, it just kind of stopped short, and it didn't say what that opportunity led the applicant to do. So that chore fell on the Planning and Zoning Commission to somehow come up with a procedure. It was kind of an awkward deal to have your planning director of the borough sitting there getting raked over the coals, if you will, over a decision that I was on the impression was final, and the hearing had already taken place, and it seemed like somebody didn't like the decision, so now all of a sudden we were kind of reinventing the wheel. But there were attorneys and folks representing the applicant in the audience, and like I say, Borough said that there is code for it, so we had to somehow move forward. And some of the discussion that came up was the attorney Sean Kelly for the borough was representing the borough's interest, and so then it was like, well, who's representing the commission, you know, who's leading the cart down the road kind of thing. And so we discussed as best we could a pathway forward of what that looks like at our next meeting, spending about an hour carved up into 5-minute little increments of testimony and going back over this case and making a decision on it in 1 hour at the next meeting after we've had the plat and after we've tackled the rest of the agenda. So, yeah, supposedly the attorney is going to provide a staff attorney, was my understanding when we left on Monday night, to guide us through findings to support the decisions that we came up with for the 6 procedural criteria, which was allowing them the 60 minutes carved up into 5-minute increments, if you will, for the applicant, the director, rebuttal, closing arguments again, and I'm baffled by it, so I'm glad that they're gonna have some attorney guide us through the process. But yeah, if you wanna come to one of the borough meetings, that might be one you wanna skip. Because that one, I have a feeling, huh?
That's the one you want to go to because findings are important to us.
Absolutely, yeah, they're,
And
yeah.
sometimes when I was up there, we were left without an attorney.
Yeah, and that's where we were trying to come up with this procedure to satisfy the attorneys that were there wanting an answer, yet the borough's telling us it's not written in code, so basically write the code, and it was like terrifying. So yeah, we'll have more of a resolution, I would think, at our next meeting, but it didn't get settled, is my thought. So yeah, after that we finished out the night, and that was all we had until our next meeting, which I believe there is a gravel pit. There is one coming up on the agenda for that evening in addition to that appeal hearing. That's right, there is one in the Funny River area that's coming back around that got postponed that now is gonna get pushed on top of that, so. Bring your bag, dinner, lunch for that one. But that's all I have. Does anybody else have any questions? All righty, we are gonna move on to city administration, and then we're gonna have a additional public comment after our city administrator.
Great, thank you, Chair Fikes. I'll be brief. We do remain really busy in planning, and so for the next meeting on May 12th, we do have 2 conditional use permits and 1 plat. We also do have 1 potential additional plat and potential airport lease for consideration. So, you know, remain busy, and so just want to kind of give you a heads up that it looks like our next meeting will be a full one as well. And that's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you, Director Foster. And I will go ahead and open it to anyone else in the audience or anyone else online that would have any additional comments.
I just have questions.
Sure, go ahead and step up.
Okay. Again, my name is Dawn Bragg, 36256 Country Lane, Sterling, Alaska.
Thanks.
Some questions. I'm trying to understand like the code, and I don't know if Ryan, if that's maybe I should be directing my questions towards you in terms of code. But are there any, within the borough, you know, Kenai Peninsula Borough Code, are there any kind of special regulations for salmon stream habitat? Like, you know, we have like, you know, the Kenai Special River Management on the Kenai River and different agencies, you know, Fish and Game, different agencies regulating different areas of the Kenai River to protect the salmon. I'm just wondering, does the Kenai Peninsula Borough even have a code or section, special section for the Kenai River or salmon within your code?
Chair Fikes, so essentially well, there's a couple things. So the Kenai Peninsula Borough, so that would be their code. And so, you know, City of Kenai, you know, code would be our focus here, and there is, and I'm, you know, and it's I would say I'm new to the community. I've been, you know, planning director here for about 4 months, so I don't have a wealth of kind of experience to draw upon. But I would say there is a difference between certainly the City of Kenai here, and then the parts of code that I focus on would be the planning. And then airport lands and then general fund land. So that's sort of my my focus here. But as far as the borough, you know, I just don't know, and it would probably be the best question for the borough. I do believe is there a river center that has to do with activity and or development on the river?
Yes,
I'm not sure if
there's a 50-foot anadromous habitat protection. So if you've got properties, whether it's residential or commercial, there's that 50-foot zone that you're going to have to address to the borough, and you're going to have to meet their criterion code to satisfy any kind of development, right down to whether you want to put a flagpole up or you want to scrape it and put in dirt and not grass. So however you want to look at that, that's one example. And then like Director Foster pointed out, for the city, the borough's going to come in and they're going to set up their code. An example for the city might be down by the docks, where we just recently went through and had a revision on some of ours, and we did a collaboration with the borough on how best to address that, looking at, you know, it's an industrial zone, how can we address the industrial zone moving forward, and the borough's got their set of codes, and so between the two of us, like I say, we were able to come up with things. But yeah, it's typically the borough's going to set the outlining parameters, but at the end of the day, inside the city limits, it's still going to come down to us. Everybody's got a piece of the river in there, and the River Center helps, I think, kind of guide some of that activity as far as what you can or can't do, and try and explain it to the general public, I guess, is what I've experienced.
So then, I just want to get that, make sure I've got that straight. So the borough has that 50-foot easement from the river, and then the city can choose to follow that or not?
No, we don't have a choice in
okay.
no. Well, let me take that back. Down by the boat dock
It's
where we
different down there.
Is it?
It's, yeah, there was the Adirondack Stream Act. They just updated it. In that general area where you're speaking of, this new development we're talking about, they've just recently done it, and you can ask more information from the Kenai Peninsula Borough, and the Watershed Forum would help you explain that. But there's a new, what is it, Adirondack Stream Act that they're working on, and due to that being a commercial area and the tidal effect area, it has different codes or rules and regulations than it would just up the river where it turns into this Kenai River Special Management Unit. Okay. And the Kenai River Special Management Unit is just, there's a sign for it. Yeah. And that's where the Kenai River Center would come into effect. And there's a sign just below that, the bridge. And from there north is Kenai River Special Management Unit area. Below that is different set of regulations and stuff. But it's a very convoluted mess, and I'm sure the Watershed Forum and the Kenai River Center would be able to give you all that information.
Okay. Thank you.
It's up Funny River, that much I know.
I think those are my only questions. I was just wondering how the whole coding system worked.
A lot of layers and a lot of people involved, so yeah, a lot of interest, so very excellent. Thank you for your comments and for participation.
Yep, thank you.
Alrighty, that's going to move us through on our list. I believe our next meeting attendance notification. Anybody planning on being absent? May 12th. Commissioner Twait, any thoughts?
I will
be here.
I will not be here, but I will be attending, probably telephonically.
And we're still doing Zoom? We're still doing Zoom.
I'm calling in.
All right. That is all I have. With all of our business, I will go ahead and call for adjournment.
Commissioner, comments and questions?
Comments and questions. Gosh, I apologize. We will start with you, Commissioner Twait. Comments, questions, thoughts?
It was kind of nice to see this from a different perspective for once. So that's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you for the opportunity. Commissioner Woodard?
No, I'm good.
Thank you. Commissioner Halstead?
I'd just like to commend Director Foster for a phenomenal job, very thorough on your presentation, and there was a lot of information that we were given today, and I thought it was very well presented, so thank you.
Commissioner Douthit?
Nothing tonight. Everything was pretty intense meeting with all the information for sure, but I think it'll be good for the city to have that piece of land hopefully developed.
Commissioner Springer?
I don't really have anything. It's been nice to be here in person for the first time in over a year.
And Mr. Greenberg, Commissioner?
I think it's pretty exciting what's happening over there in Kenai Landing. I'm hoping to see that be a successful project.
I concur, and thank you, staff and administration, for keeping me in touch. I appreciate the prompts. That is all I have. Are we official? Yay. We're done. Thank you, Commissioner Twait.
Thank you.
Goodbye.